Hello! I hope you're doing good today. I've got a story to read today from the Story Chest, and it's a version of one of my favourites, and it's called The Old Woman That Lived in a Cola Can. Would you like to see a picture? There she is, in her can of cola. Not all that long ago, and not so very far away, there was an old woman who lived in a cola can. All right, you'd hear her say, the place is small, definitely chilly in December and scorching hot in July, but the floor never needs a coat of polish. There's no dark corners where a spider can lurk. The old woman reckoned it wasn't that bad a place for a home, especially seeing as there wasn't a penny to pay in rent. One day, though, she got a telly, and she suddenly saw all sorts of things she'd never seen before. She saw all the adverts and loads of films, but instead of making her happy, these new things only made her mad. She shouted and swore and shook her fist at the programmes. Rotten shame! Rotten shame! T'ain't fair! It ain't fair! She created. Why should I have to make do in this tinny little place when some lucky devil's got nice flats in brand new tower blocks with lifts to take them up and chutes to send the rubbish down? What's wrong with me, I'd like to know? Why can't I have a chance to be choosy? Here's a picture of her shouting at the telly. She went on like that for ages, banging and clanging inside her can, till one day, by a stroke of luck, just before her voice gave out, someone special heard her from the road, a flash young man who had won the lottery and was looking for ways to get rid of his money. He couldn't get across the grass to her quickly enough. Good Bennett, darling, what a noise! What a girls and boys! But I heard what you were shouting, and I've got to say I do feel sorry, I do. I feel choked, prodded and poked. But say no more, girl, and you just keep your pecker up, give a couple of days for some wheeling and dealing, watch out for the motor, and we'll see what we're gonna see. So the old woman said no more. She switched off her telly and kept her eyes glued to the road, and before the milkman had been round 3 times, the flash young man was back, sitting on his motor and calling across the grass. Come on, love, get out of the old can, jump in the car, the old jam jar, and come along o' me. I'll soon sort you out. And she didn't need telling twice. She jumped in his car, just as she was, and before you could say knife, she was in the town. Here's a picture of her, jumping in the car. She was in the town in a nice little flat in a brand new block, with a lift to take her up and down and a chute to send the rubbish down, and she was over the moon with delight. But she clean forgot to say thank you to the flash young man, and anyway, he'd shut off to get on with his spending. He'd gone to the races and smart and sunny places, to Catterick, Corfu and Crete. But after a while, when his mouth ached with smiling, he thought he'd go back and see how the old woman was getting on. And what did he hear when he got there? The tinkle of friendly teacups, a few contented sighs like the summer wind in net curtains? No, not a bit. Just the slamming of doors and shouts enough to wake the caretaker. Rotten shame! Rotten shame! T'ain't fair! T'ain't fair! I'm just about up to here, miles off the ground, in this poky little flat where there's some folks got houses in streets and their own front gates with cars out the front and patios round the back. What's wrong with me, I'd like to know? Why don't I get a chance to be superior? Here she is, shouting and screaming enough to wake the caretaker. There he is. Cheer up, doll, he pleaded. The flash young man listened to every word she said. He kept dead quiet till he'd heard everything, and then he put his eye to the spy hole and he shouted through the door, "Cheer up, doll," he pleaded. "No need for all that. Say no more, girl, and keep your pecker up. Give us a couple of days for some wheeling and a dealing, and watch out for the motor, and we'll see what we're gonna see." So the old woman said no more. She stopped banging doors and kept her eyes on the parking bays, and before the kids had ruined the lifts 3 more times, the flash young man was back, leaning on his bonnet and calling up to her balcony, "Come on, love, get down them stairs, jump in the motor, and the old haddock and bloater, and come along o' me. I'll soon sort you out." Well, she didn't need telling twice. She ran down the stairs, jumped in the back, and before she could say Jack Robinson, there she was in a neat little townhouse in a proper little street, with a car out front and a patio round the back. Here she is, jumping over the garden gate, delighted. And she was over the moon with delight, but she clean forgot to say thank you to the flash young man. And anyway, he'd shot off to get on with his spending. He'd gone to casinos and sporting club beanos, to Monte, Mallorca and Maine. But after a while, his hand hurt with the winning, so he thought he'd go back to see how the old woman was getting on. And what did he hear when he got there? The contented creak of an old cane chair and the sound of soft singing to Radio 2? Not a bit. Just the slam of the swing bin being attacked, and shouts which ran to the end of the road. "Rotten shame! Rotten shame! 'Tain't fair! It ain't fair! Here I am shunted off in this common little house when some people live up tree-lined cul-de-sacs with nicely spoken neighbours and a man to do the grass. What's wrong with me, I'd like to know? When do I get a chance to be posh?" The flash young man heard everything she said, and he rang upon her chimes. "Heaven help us, love, what a state! What a terrible 2 and 8! We can't have this. No dealing. Watch out for the motor, and we'll see what we're gonna see." So the old woman said no more. She stopped kicking in the kitchen, and she packed her bags instead. And before she'd carried the dustbin through 3 times, the flash young man was back. Ooh. Elbow on the dashboard, tooting at the door. "Come on, love, leg it over the gate, jump in the Bentley, the old gently, gently, and come along o' me. I'll soon sort you out." She didn't need telling twice. She slammed herself into the car with a hat in her hand, and before you could say 1 o'clock, there she was in a double-fronted house in a cul-de-sac with nicely spoken neighbours and a man to do the grass. And she was over the moon with delight, but she clean forgot to say thank you to the flash young man. And anyway, he'd shot off to get on with his spending. He bought up some pubs and 3 football clubs, United, Juventus and York. But after a while, he got fed up with watching other people run around, and he thought he'd go back to see how the old woman was getting on. And what did he hear when he got there? The plop of fresh coffee being poured for the vicar, the rinsing of hands to get spoon polish off? Not a bit. Just the rip of a radiator off the wall and shouts loud enough to divert the traffic. "Rotten shame! Rotten shame! 'Tain't fair! 'Tain't fair! Here am I, overlooked in this middle-class place when lords and ladies have mansions and big country parks and servants to send off to Harrods. What's wrong with me, I'd like to know? When do I get a chance to be upper crust?" The flash young man caught every word she said and then made his way around the back. "Hold your horses! Half time!" he called through the tradesman's entrance. "You make yourself sick, Uncle Dick. Say no more, girl, and keep your pecker up. Gives a couple of days for some wheeling and dealing. Watch out for the motor, and we'll see what we're gonna see." So the old woman said no more. She put a few favourite bits into a suitcase, and by the time she'd turned 3 collecting tins away from her door, the flash young man was back, purring into the driveway and breaking the beam on her burglar alarm. "Come on, love, let's move it. Jump in the Jag, in the old boast and brag, and come along o' me. I'll soon sort you out." She didn't need telling twice. She shot in as fast as the speed of greased lightning, and before you could say hell for leather, there she was in a mansion, a duchess no less, with servants to send off to Harrods and a tiara to put on her head. and she was over the moon with delight. But she clean forgot to say thank you to the flash young man. And anyway, he'd shot off to get on with his spending. He bought up an airway to make cheap fairway for tourists on trips to the States. But after a while, he got fed up with being pointed at, and he thought he'd go back and see how the old woman was getting on. Do you want to see a picture of her? Here she is. Do you think she looks happy? And what did he hear when he got there? The click of a croquet ball sent through a hoop and the flow of a pool being filled? Not a bit of it. Just the sound of a summer house being destroyed and shouts loud enough for 3 countries to hear. Rotten shame, rotten shame, 'tain't fair, it ain't fair. Here I am, just a 2-bob duchess down here, when someone we know with a crown on her head. What's wrong with me, I'd like to know? When do I get the chance to be royal? The flash young man took note of what the old woman said, and he made an appointment to see her. Your Grace, what a row! What a bull and a cow! You're a coming on strong, but I know what you mean. So don't need to say another word. Give us a couple of days for some wheeling and a dealing. Watch out for the motor, and we'll see what we're going to see. So the old woman said no more. She threw her tiara into the pool and kept her eyes peeled for the car with no number, and before she had time to sack 3 of her maids, the flash young man was back, gliding up towards her in his silver Rolls Royce. Come on, Ma'am, he invited. Jump into the roller, the top hat and bowler, and come along to me. I'll soon sort you out. She didn't need telling twice. She got into the back, cocked her head to one side, and started waving away, out of this window and that, and before she could say, "It gives me great pleasure," she was there. Back in her home, in the cola can, where, yell as she liked, she lived for the rest of her life. But she never saved up for a telly again, and she wouldn't have said thank you if you'd have given her one. Here's a picture of her getting very cross in her cola can. Back where she started. Well, I never. I hope you enjoyed that one. Have a lovely day.